What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you another look at Warhammer 40k Dark Heresy, and specifically a little bit about its investigation system that will be one of its core features. Straight away, I'm bringing you guys this information from a deep dive that Owlcat Games posted about the system, and that's important because if you're unaware, the game is entering alpha here in a couple weeks, so there will likely be even more information to share and actually show off at that point. But for right now, all I've got are a couple of screenshots and the prior trailer, just in case you're wondering about whether or not you need to actually watch this video. But basically, since Dark Heresy was announced, it was hinted at that one of the kind of central things this game would do is get down to like detective style investigations. Now, whether or not that is a system that is like wholesale replacing some of the management systems they've done in their previous games, like most pressingly, I would say something like the colony management sim in Rogue Trader. I don't know for sure that this is like outright replacing that stuff, but this feels like that kind of system, but for Dark Heresy, if that makes sense. However, I've been wondering how that was going to work, and now we've certainly got some answers. But probably one of like the first things you should really know about this system is that it is going to be possible to fail. Or not so much fail as get the answer wrong, or sometimes you may intentionally point the finger at the wrong person. But whether they be accusations big or small, these investigations are going to form a lot of the gameplay, and in particular, they describe them as having repercussions for the entire sector, at least in terms of the critical stuff, and then they also mention that there will in fact be some minor investigations as well. However, in order to do that, our Inquisition Acolyte here has to actually investigate, and as you would imagine, that basically starts with finding clues. Some of this stuff is going to be really straightforward and found just by doing some basic investigation, but where things get interesting is that some of those leads that you find are going to be false. They mention that some will be too dangerous for you to actually follow, but that just about anything may hold the information you need in order to actually solve any given investigation. And to make that a little bit more difficult, some of this stuff is going to require your actual skills to uncover in the first place. But lucky for us, there are going to be some tools at our disposal in the process. They actually in particular mention a lot of servo skulls, just a whole bunch of different types to help us in given situations. And I have to wonder then, is there going to be like any sort of restriction on that? How many of these are available? How many can you have with you? That kind of stuff. And that's information I imagine that will be answered sooner or later. But the gist of it is these servo skulls will be able to perform scans, synthesize speech, record stuff, analyze substances, just all sorts of different things for you. And using those tools, as well as your companions and their expertise, you're going to basically find all of the information you can about a given investigation, but then that is where it gets taken to the journal. So you're going to have a separate detective journal for this, where each individual case of yours has all the information kind of laid out for you. And once you have this information, you can start piecing it together sort of Mind Palace style in order to create various conclusions that give you information about a given scenario within the investigation. Now, what I thought was interesting here is they once again point out that some of these conclusions can just straight up be incorrect, but you will have a little bit of backup from your companions here. In particular, every one of your companions represents, a specialist in whatever it is they do. And as a result of that, they can, on occasion, provide information or simply opinions about the things you are analyzing to provide you just some general help. But what I thought was especially interesting, and the part of this system that intrigues me the most personally, is the final part, passing judgment. Basically, you're going to sum up everything in a report for the Inquisitor. The catch is, they mention that this report doesn't necessarily have to be accurate. In fact, they specifically mention that it might be possible to falsify said accounts, lay blame on people who weren't actually involved, whether that just be through sheer animosity or, just a difference of opinion about who's actually to blame about something. But the really great part is that they also mention that there may well, of course, be consequences for these things. And I have to wonder then, between being able to just sort of fail, make completely wrong assumptions, and lie in your reports, what exactly changes in terms of the outcome there? Or will that even lead to unique outcomes that you can't get otherwise? And while this is typically the kind of thing Owlcat is pretty good at, I hope, basically, for my sake at least, that there are, in fact, wildly different outcomes for each scenario, but I do think what will make or break a system like this is whether or not you can make failing interesting and fun. In particular, though, I would love to see situations where being, empirically correct about whatever the investigation pertains to, that is to say, actually figuring out exactly what happened and laying blame accordingly, might not actually be like the best outcome for an investigation. I think that would be especially interesting, where the best outcome, given just the very nature of the Inquisition and their job and role in the Warhammer 40k universe, the best outcome for them and what they actually want the situation to be when it resolves itself, I think has potential to maybe not be literally what the truth is. And I think if they can manage to incorporate stuff like that into this investigation system, I personally, at the very least, will be happy with it. But either way, that's a rough idea of the investigation system that will actually be at play here, and a little happy to see that it won't be simply following just given quest objectives around. I've seen other games do that, where they take a system that is at least in spirit like this investigation system, but they lead you around by the nose a little bit too much, and then it feels a little disingenuous, frankly. So happy to see what they have outlined here at the very least. I hope when the alpha rolls around, we'll get to see it more in practice so I can judge for myself how enjoyable it actually is, but it sounds good on paper here. But that is as good a place as any to wrap up this particular video. Certainly hope you enjoyed it. If you did, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. I will certainly be covering more Warhammer 40k Dark Heresy in the future. But for today, that's going to do it. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.